If you've got an injury, there's 5 really important things, probably the most important things that you need to get right as part of your recovery journey. And they're arguably more important than the physical rehab itself, because without these, you won't be getting the most out of that. And these will apply to every single injury and also a lot of chronic pain presentations as well. Number one is hydration. How hydrated you are can have a massive effect on how well your body functions. A lot of people today don't get enough water that their body needs day to day. I'm definitely guilty of this. Going through your day, it's busy, you're rushing, and then you realise you haven't had a drink of anything for ages. And we have a really good feedback system for this, and it's the colour of your pee. You want to be aiming to have at least 1 or 2 pees in a day that are clear. And make sure you're focusing more on getting actual water in your system, not drinks that contain a lot of calories or diuretics like caffeine or alcohol. You can imagine the difference of a well-hydrated body like you could with a steak compared to beef jerky. Not only recovery, getting more minerals to cells, but also for injury prevention. The other point to note with drinking water is that all is not equal. If you imagine you have just tap water with all the minerals taken out, that won't be as good for getting into your cells, as a lot of the time it will need minerals to help be transported in. And rather than having to buy a lot of mineral water, you can get something like Himalayan rock salt, just put a small amount into your water. It's really cheap and will last you for ages. If you imagine hunter-gatherer days, water would have been collected that would have run over rocks and contained minerals due to that. This is just a version of that for the modern day. Number 2 is sleep. This is one of the most important aspects for recovery and general pain modulation. It can, however, become a very tricky aspect because pain can cause you to wake up and get less sleep. However, it's working on all the things you do have control over, like the time of going to bed and the time in bed, and trying to maximize it. Because a lot of repair mechanisms will happen during sleep and that restful state. You can try and minimize wake-ups. Say if you have a shoulder injury, arrange pillows to stop you from rolling onto that side, which might then produce more pain and wake you. Sleep should be one of the biggest priorities if looking to maximize health and recovery outcomes. Number 3 is diet. This definitely can't be overlooked, and one of the main components of this is making sure to get enough protein, as a primary job of protein is that of growth and repair. You can be doing all the rehab to aid in recovery, but if you don't have the building blocks there, then it will become a much slower process. Also, cells have a lipid layer around them, so good fats are essential here. As well as getting in all the other nutrients and minerals, the importance of diet just can't be understated, but it's often left in the dark when looking at the main things that can help. Number 4 is mental state. Now, this is probably the biggest component of this list, and its importance is becoming much more recognized. Where pain and damage before used to be exclusively interlinked by the biomedical model, the recognition that there's more to the picture is starting to become much more mainstream. It's not there yet, but it's definitely getting there. And this is where not only does the biological matter, but also the psychological and the social aspects, and brings the biopsychosocial model to the forefront in treatment. But how does this work and how does it link? The mind and the body are not separate things. Some dismiss the idea of pain being in the head, but the mind is the body. It's all one system and it's all interlinked. Trying to separate them out as 2 different things just doesn't work. I'll explain it in a biological way of how this link plays such an important role, as it tends to give people a better picture, even though there is much more to it. So let's talk about 2 hormones, cortisol and oxytocin. Cortisol is a hormone linked with stress, and oxytocin linked with more love and connection. Cortisol has been linked with delayed healing, and oxytocin has been linked to help with repair, and both of these hormones are based on your psychological state and social settings. The other effect of cortisol is that it can also affect your sleep, which we've already explained the importance of, so this is like a double whammy. High chronic stress can also be linked with chronic pain, and you'll see higher rates of chronic pain within depression and anxiety. Stress can come in different forms, and a lot of it is good in small doses. But if there's that underlying ongoing stress, this can affect recovery. Common causes of this longer term stress can be financial stress, job stress, relationship stress, and also things like loss of a loved one and bereavements. Being more isolated and lonely can also affect this, as there is reduced oxytocin, and that is bad for health generally. So having a cuddle, spending time with friends, having work you enjoy and is meaningful to you, just stroking a pet, anything that helps increase levels of oxytocin and decrease levels of cortisol can help with this. And just goes to show one of the mechanisms of why psychological state and social setting can play a big role in pain and recovery. One of the best things you can do to actually help with recovery from injury is to be optimistic about it. The brain has such a big part to play that we likely know very little about its true effects. Just take the placebo effect for one. The biggest positive impact for any recovery, and for the most part, is the likelihood why a lot of treatments seem to work. Number 5 is smoking. This affects health generally in the majority of aspects, and healing is one of them. We spoke a lot in the other pointers about the importance of getting minerals and nutrients into the body effectively. Well, smoking does the opposite and decreases the body's ability to deliver necessary nutrients for healing. So if needing any excuse to stop, it will help you get out of pain and recover quicker if you're currently suffering with an injury. So next time you're thinking about all the fancy treatments you can get to help in the recovery process, make sure you're getting all these basics right first, as the best you possibly can. Rehab you're doing doesn't have to be fancy stuff either. It's more important that you're actually doing it and remaining consistent. Another common approach following an injury is to ice it straight away, but the guidance on this has changed, and in this video here, we talk about why ice might not always be the best approach, and what the latest guidelines are saying, and when actually would be the best time to use it. Another video that might interest you here is the science and mechanisms of why exercise can help with mental health.